Go ahead, introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm panicking. Introductions are not my forte. My name's Emily, and I've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder for about 6 years now. A lot of times where people will be like, oh, they were happy one minute and sad the next. They're so bipolar. Well, that's actually more along the line of a borderline thing. Bipolar is usually like cycles of months or even years in one or the other, and borderline is 10 different drastic series of emotions before breakfast. Like, it's all day, all the time.
Is that how you would sum up BPD? Is drastic emotions?
Yeah, usually.
Or lack of.
Yeah. Yep. It's stoicism or everything. Yeah. Once you feel something as an 8 or higher, or you can just feel nothing. The way it is being borderline, the way I put it is everything is an 8 or higher. Normally people have a scale of 1 to 10 as far as their emotions and things, and everything is an 8 or higher. So that goes with empathy, and you can either have absolutely none or too much, and a lot of people with borderline have none, and that tends to be where things get manipulative and we can be very volatile. And that's where a lot of the stigma comes from. A lot of therapists won't even address it with you because it is a diagnosis of manipulation.
What would you say life is like living with a mental illness? What does your day-to-day look like?
Definitely having issues, even just starting with sleeping, either oversleeping all the time or not at all, which then leads into trouble maintaining any kind of daily activity. Taking care of the animals pretty much drains me entirely for the rest of my day.
What kind of animals do you have?
Well, I have 2 dogs and 2 cats and a plethora of reptiles and then a leech.
What the heck is up with the medication that you're taking now?
They just changed 3 of my meds. They took me off of my only medication that's ever worked long-term that I've been on for the last about 2 years. That's a supplemental antidepressant. So it's in the morning, which is basically to keep me from being a complete zombie like every other night medication makes me. And then they went to put me on a new one that was supposed to take the place of 2 of my antidepressants, but it's $488 a month. So that's completely unaffordable, and now I will not be picking it up. And I'm currently off of all of my antidepressants and kind of freaking out about it.
So when were you diagnosed?
I was illegally diagnosed the first time. I started seeing my first therapist when I was about 15, and about a year in, she made an offhand comment about my borderline tendencies, and when I asked her what she was talking about, because that had never been brought up prior to that, she asked me how old I was. And when I told her that I was only 16, she said, forget I said that, you can't be diagnosed with that until you're 18. So that first time was brought up, and then I found out that my therapist met with my mom without telling me as well, and she gave her a workbook. It was called Stop Walking on Eggshells, Taking Your Life Back When Someone You Love Has Borderline Personality Disorder. And it basically talked about what monsters we are.
And did your mom agree with that? Did she see the similarities, or did she hate the workbook?
My mom didn't tell me. I found it later. So that actually was a really intense fight. My mom and I did not get along well for a very long time in my life.
So when did you make up with her? You're on very good terms now.
When I was in the psych ward. It took being an inpatient to finally have things click with my mom that they were that bad, and I was her first real experience with mental illness. Yeah, no, we're very close now, and I'm really grateful for that, but there was a pretty significant time in my life where I genuinely hated her.
Do you think that feeling of hate, was that kind of do you think I was extremified because of your borderline personality? Or?
Yeah, definitely. So like going back to the 8 or higher thing, like really minor inconveniences are completely devastating.
Tell me about splitting.
Oh,
Because
splitting.
I don't know what the heck that is.
Oh, so I always say that the first fight is the last fight when it comes to friendships, relationships. Most people don't come back from the first fight. Because going back to that 8 or higher thing, if I have any kind of thing where I don't like you, I hate you. So splitting is pretty much when you have somebody who, I don't know, it can be a relationship, a friendship, somebody in general that you get along with, whatever, and then something happens and you just split. Like, they're dead to you. There's no coming back. I've recently split pretty freaking hard from my sister-in-law. She definitely brings out some pretty bad sides of me, and that was just somebody I can't be around anymore. But now it's like she doesn't exist. People talk about her, and it takes me a second to be like, oh, yeah. Like, I mean, I guess she's technically my sister-in-law, but...
Do you think that in some way can also kind of relate to your whole, like you said, out of sight, out of mind thing? Like,
yeah,
do you think that's why it's so much easier to like just forget about her?
Probably. That's another side of it, is like a lack of emotional, I'd say it's like object permanence, but it's emotional. And that goes back to like when things are 8 or higher, when something is terrible and it's full on despair, you literally cannot remember what it was like without that. Like, that's all that exists. And then when things are like more in like, I guess kind of like the manic state, like when things are just like euphoric, you never know what was wrong to begin with. Like, it just doesn't exist. And that goes with people too. Like, I can't remember what it was like to like her. I don't know what it was like to ever feel anything good about her. She was bordering pretty close to an FP for a while there, which is a favorite person that you kind of fixate on.
How then, you know, since we just love to sleep, how has your mental health been since COVID, since quarantining, since everybody started working from home? Like, how has that affected you?
So, I quit my job at the start of, like, when everything started shutting down. I quit my job that May, like May 1st, I was done. Part of that was physical health. Part of that was not wanting to trust anybody in a pandemic. But a lot of people talk about how much they want things to go back to normal, and honestly, I can't relate, because this has been the easiest for me. Like, I'm not expected to go places and do things, and I don't have to see people I don't want to see, and kind of thriving. Like, genuinely love being able to stay home and not have people complain about it. Yeah, pandemic-wise, it's definitely been easy. Cannot relate to all of the people whining about all the things.
Wanting to go back out and like see
the
people.
one and only thing that I was like, oh man, that sucks, was when My Chemical Romance's concert got canceled for Riot Fest. That's it. Like, that's the only thing I cared about. I just wanted to see NCR. Other than that, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. I'm like, man, I sure wish we could still go do that. Like, nah.
Do you have any suggestions on how people can help others with PPD, or like any like thing that you think would be important for like mental health care workers to know when like talking to somebody with PPD? Like, just, do you have just any advice, like things that you wish could be done better?
I think one of the hardest things about, in general, is just accessibility and cost of things. Like, you go to therapy once or twice a month. A lot of times it's not enough. An hour doesn't give you the time to really get into things. And yeah, in general, just affordability, lack of resources. I drive 2 hours to go to see any of my medical team because it's been so hard to get established somewhere and to build that level of trust that then trying to find anyone.
Thank you so much, Emily, for doing this interview with me. I really appreciate it. You were a star.
Not even a little bit.